Welcome back. You've just tuned into Women's AM. This morning I am joined by sisters Charmin, Laika, our special guest sister Aisha Bushar, and mashallah we've got brother Muaz Mahmoud on the phone. Assalamu alaikum everybody. Assalamu alaikum brother Muaz. Are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for being on the show with us today.
Well, yeah.
Mashallah, we understand that you do a lot of fundraising, and one of the experiences that you've had in fundraising was actually sleeping on the streets to help awareness about homelessness. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, we managed to see some of your Facebook posts, mashallah, throughout your sort of night on the streets, and I have to say it was kind of surprising, I suppose, the sort of things that you don't think about, you know, when it comes to people being on the streets. And inshallah, you'll be able to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, where would you like to start?
Inshallah, we'll come to the discussion in just a moment. Alhamdulillah, we also have Sister Aisha on the show today. Mashallah, you are CEO of Aisha Academy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Definitely. Aisha Academy is a UK registered charity. It's a charity that my dad founded, and alhamdulillah, I'm now able to basically run the projects which run in Bangladesh and in the UK, mostly in Bedford, which is in Bedfordshire, so quite privileged to do that.
Alhamdulillah, so it's good to have two people who are in the know, alhamdulillah. So now we'll get on with the discussion and let's get right to it. We in the West may live in the glitz and glamour of modern life, but hidden away lies the daunting reality of homelessness and rough sleeping across the UK and in many other parts of the world. Homelessness affects many people where one may be deprived of basic necessities such as food, clothing and shelter. However, as Muslims, we have a duty to reach out to those around us in their time of need with patience and steadfast. This is a live discussion, so if any of our viewers would like to make any kind of input on the discussion, please do call in. The number is on your screens now. Or you can tweet us at Islam Channel, #WAM15. So, Sister Aisha, I'm going to come to you first. What does it mean to be homeless? Because a lot of people tend to have different definitions of, you know, what homelessness is.
That's actually a very good question and interesting as well, because a lot of people perceive it as someone that's an alcoholic or someone that's a drug dealer, you know, someone that's just in the corner of the town centre, you know, in their wrapped with the cardboard boxes and stuff. But actually, what I've come to realise as well through my community work is that homelessness is not just that. It's actually individuals could be like ourselves that perhaps have been chucked out from our house or had, you know, problems with our husband, or revert sister, if, you know, looking at the Islamic perspective, that the parents disown them now because of that situation, so where do they go? It could also be squatting. A lot of people do squatting and, you know, live in places that they're not meant to be at, and also people that have migrated over here.
So subhanAllah, there's a whole range of reasons. Brother Muaz, from your experience of spending the night on the streets, did you get a chance to talk to many people in that night?
I actually got a chance to speak to. There were a few people that I got to speak to actually. There was a couple, an older couple, and it was just really, really sad. Hello?
Yes, brother, we can hear you.
Yeah. You know, a lot of the people were. I mean, you know, they'd struggle and. Even just, you know, something so simple as trying to fall asleep was a big struggle for them, because you know these specific people that I met, they were getting attacked by you know, by people that would come throw acid at them, other homeless people. There seems to be like a few cliques in the homeless world that no one really knows about. You know,
SubhanAllah, they're very vulnerable being out there on the streets. I mean, did you get a chance to ask some of them what the reasons were for them being in that situation? Because as Sister Aisha mentioned, there are various reasons for why people are, you know, end up being homeless. What was the sort of reasons that you've heard?
Well, you know, the main one is just lack of shelter. You know, they've come as immigrants, they have no papers, they have nothing, and that's a huge factor. That's probably one of the main ones. And it's actually rising a lot in our Muslim community as well, from Muslims that are coming from abroad and some of our own Muslims from here.
SubhanAllah, I think we don't really realise how tough it is. I think a lot of people have this misconception that, you know, for people who are coming from abroad, they come, you know, straight over and they think that, you know, things will be easy for them. And a lot of the times they don't realise that that's one of the biggest things that they could encounter is becoming homeless and being vulnerable, because you don't know what could happen to you on the streets. And, you know, we kind of touched upon the sort of people that you find on the streets. Sister Sham, could you elaborate a little bit on that?
We need to understand that it could happen to anyone, and as Sister Aisha mentioned, we have this idea that they're, you know, drug users or alcoholics and stuff. But I heard a story of a Riva's sister, who actually, she had an academic background. She was actually a doctor with a PhD, but she became homeless. So I was really surprised to actually see that. But as you said, Rivets as well, who experienced homelessness. So some of the people who do sleep on the rough, as you said, migrants, refugees, after they get the refugee status, they don't know, you know, where to go. Young people who maybe after after college or university, their family kind of, you know, want them out for whatever reason. Disabled people as well, and divorcees as well. So they all come from different walks of life, and it's not something that's restricted to anyone. It could happen at any point in your life, and it's all about the accumulation of events in your life as well. So there are structural factors that affect you and your personal factors as well. So structural factors could be like housing policies, etc.
I mean, historically, the demographic of homelessness has changed throughout the years. After World War II, there was a rise in, you know, need for welfare. So the welfare state was created in 1942 by William Beveridge. But now the UK is in a state where, you know, there's a need for social housing, and there's lack of it. There are many reasons why there's, you know, rising homelessness. So rising housing costs, low pay, exacerbated lack of social housing, the refusal to build more, the lack of rent regulation. So landlords are able to exploit people. Also the gentrification of urbanised areas, which basically means that richer people move into urbanised areas and poorer people cannot afford to therefore live there anymore. You know, in the UK, unemployment is reducing, but homelessness is rising, which means that people don't have they have jobs, but they can't afford to live. And in fact, I have a really good statistic here for you. You know, that I've read from an article in the Mirror. A shocking rise in homelessness means there are 55% more rough sleepers in the UK now than when David Cameron became Prime Minister in 2010. And that's absolutely insane. I find that, you know, it's so hard. You know, when we think of the UK, now UK is being labelled as a food bank country, and it's so sad to, you know, to see that.
I think there's a lot of things that kind of contribute to people becoming homeless, and we don't tend to think about that. Like we said, you know, we kind of fixate on maybe people having, you know, certain addiction problems as to why they're homeless. Oh, you know, they've never taken responsibility in their life, and this is why they're on the streets. And sometimes having that attitude kind of hinders us from actually wanting to do something to help a person, or even kind of treating them as a human being, and just even sitting down for a moment and speaking with them, because, you know, they do feel isolated. It's sort of they've become invisible to some.
I think when you leave them in that state and with that problem, it only goes deeper, because you're not helping them in any way. So they're going to be in that depressive mode, and it's just going to go deeper and deeper.
I think when people are in that state of mind where they feel like when they see a homeless person, it's completely alien to them. They don't feel anything anymore, and it's.
I'll be honest, but when I first started the soup kitchens that we do with Aisha Academy, which is feeding the homeless, when I first started it, I was actually so scared, because I've never approached anyone, you know, that is homeless, and it's really frightening actually. But once you overcome it, it becomes quite, you know, you get a bit easy and be like, you know what, it's actually okay. And once you start building rapport and dialogue with them,
I think it comes down to, you know, how much you know, homeless people are demonized, because a lot of the times, you know, we're always reading horrible things about homeless people, and, you know, these negative sort of opinions about homeless people, and that's kind of what contributes to that fear. A lot of people, do feel like, oh my goodness, you know, I don't want to go near him or near her. I don't know what they could do. They may be dangerous, and we don't realise that, you know, they're in more of a dangerous position than we are, subhanAllah, because they're out there on the streets. They're very vulnerable to any sort of, you know, violence and any sort of people taking advantage of them. I think, Sister Shaman, you touched upon, you know, revert sisters, subhanAllah, who end up being on the streets. I mean, you know, how is it that, you know, Muslim women are, you know, particularly affected in this sense?
So after they've reverted, their family or their friends may reject them, and they can't go to their families or friends for any kind of help or advice. So it's more likely, especially if you have children as well, that you can actually end up in the streets. But I mean, I've got this. I came across this article on. It's actually in America, where Sister Jamila Ibrahim. She's a 50-year-old correctional officer, and she basically is working for a shelter. And she said one of the main concerns in the US regarding Muslim women and like homelessness and women in general is, so firstly, women who have converted to Islam, they're struggling with the complete rejection from their non-Muslim families. Also, women who are married and who basically bring men from overseas for passport, whatever legal reasons. And then also older women who basically live from paychecks. They're basically single women who live off a paycheck. And so those are just some of the reasons I had come across. And also women who are basically subject to physical abuse, marriage issues related to mental health as well, etc. So especially when they're single as well, and when you have children as well, and being convert as well, it's really difficult.
SubhanAllah, I think we find that there are a lot of problems within not just the community, but even society as a whole, that we don't take it upon ourselves to try and rectify the problem, because we think that the problem is bigger than us, and in a way it is. I mean, let me bring in Brother Muaz. Brother Muaz, what have you found from your night that you spent on the streets? Did you find that you felt particularly unsafe, or that you felt that people were ignoring you? Did you feel that invisibility?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was sitting there with a sign saying homeless for charity, and even with that sign, a lot of people still wouldn't pay any attention. It's just we're just programmed to just be completely robotic and just walk, down the street, and just whenever someone asks for change or anything, we just immediately ignore them. And it's a shame, really. I'm not encouraging people to give change. I'm not encouraging people to give money, because God knows what they're spending that money on. But I really, really encourage people to give some food, especially at night when it's really cold. I mean, my homeless night was in May, and that's like the spring season, edging up to the summer season. And to be honest with you, it got freezing at night, and I got really hungry at one point. So I mean, you get hungry, you get thirsty, you get lonely, the time goes by very slow, you don't get to sleep much, and for me it was 24 hours, and I can't imagine the people that actually do it,
day in, day out, because they haven't got the choice.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
SubhanAllah,
it's homeless people, 500,000 homeless people in the UK, so that's huge. It's like roughly the size of Bristol.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really shocking when you think about it in that way, because you don't tend to think about people's needs and necessities. We kind of overlook those things. It's so sort of normalized in part of our life when it comes to just personal hygiene, and even the way that we dress, depending to the weather. We don't really tend to think about these things for people who are homeless, that they have these needs as well. But alhamdulillah, we'll come back to this topic, inshallah. We're off to a break, but do stay tuned for the rest of the discussion on reaching out to the homeless. But before we go, here's a reminder of this week's competition.